Brought to you by Connect.js, Atlanta's premier JavaScript conference. Sponsored in part by FeatherDirect. Need a mobile app? Contact us for your custom mobile solution.
Okay, so it's 11:15, so I think I have the go sign to begin, if everybody's okay. All right then. Hello everyone, thank you for coming, and also welcome to day 2 of the conference in Atlanta. My name is Jay Lee, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Movable Ads. Today I'm going to begin by setting up a little bit of context about myself, and then move on with our session. But before I move on with that, by show of hands, how many of you today are Titanium developers? Okay, so the reason I asked that is just to get this out of the way. This session with moi today, there isn't going to be any hack. I'm not going to be releasing a source code, but I'm going to share some user experience and some charts and an actual use case that our company is actually going through. So there is some beef, but I don't think to some people who are waiting for some hack or some code or some repository, that's not going to happen. So sorry to put that out there. So prior to Movable Ads, I've been part of 4 other startups developing mobile apps primarily. Most recently, I served as the UX team's lead engineer at a company that's known to bring out the next big thing every time they release the software or a product. With Movable Ads, which is my 5th startup, we are currently based in Austin, Texas. Just recently opened their Asian office in Seoul, Korea. I'm with my colleague from Korea, DK, in the back. So I'm really happy to be here today. And before I move on, I hate to sound very paranoid, but I would like to address that none of my talk today does not reflect the view of my former employer. So the views expressed today during the session are all my own personal views. So today, I would like to share a story about building proximity-based retail experience for cross-platform devices. This kind of sounds like we're going to be doing building beacon stuff and GPS location-aware apps. It is related to that, but this session isn't really about coding per se. But the focus today will be about user experience, like I stressed before, particularly in the retail space. And the reason I chose to talk about this topic is the very reason because my current company, Movable Ads, we are currently targeting our vertical in the retail space. To go even more deeper, we're not just going after any retail space, we're kind of treating the sporting venues, as in the sports stadiums, as a retail space. So the talk today about creating a user experience around a retail space does reflect what we're actually doing in Austin and in Korea. And also, it was really easy to think about this topic as well because finding a solution that would overcome the decline of foot traffic in the brick and mortar businesses has always been an issue that I wanted to tackle, even before it became an issue. So the interest came from that as well. And the next reason comes from the hype around Bluetooth technology. So I don't hate Bluetooth. I'm not here to strike a bolt in iBeacon. But then again, I'm not totally sold in that one piece of technology so that I want to build something that surrounds that technology or protocol. I think it's an awesome technology, but it seems like there are more ways to make it simplified in terms of the use case, even for developers, not just the end user. So on that note, I'm not a big fan of just using Bluetooth or iBeacon just because of the sake of it being Bluetooth or just the hype around it. And other buzzwords like IoT, M2M, M2X, O2O, which stands for online to offline, it kind of took off in Asia recently and so forth, can be easily found in social media. And I think a lot of the early stage startups, including ourselves, we're kind of bombarded by these buzzwords and we kind of have the urge and we're kind of pushed at the same time toward that direction, thinking that, we got to do this, we got to use Bluetooth, we got to use iBeacons, we have to go NFC because Apple is going to release something. But then again, the hype layer sounds easy, but in order to make that a real business, not an expensive hobby, you have to deal with the dirty stuff where the magic happens. So the reason I say that is our company focuses on creating a user experience being a device and protocol agnostic rather than trying to focus on using or utilizing a certain protocol. So like I said before, the subject of proximity-based service and technology is being spoken, but then again, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be talking about iBeacons or Bluetooth Smart. But rather, the keyword for this session is going to be retail experience, or RX, so some agency industry calls. So whether your business is retail, sales, IT solutions, or manufacturing, there are always going to be demand to be met, demands coming from the customer side. Though many businesses have varying degrees of interactions with their client base, ensuring that the experience is as structured and maintained to the highest level, and that level is what influences the stability and growth. Therefore, the hype doesn't really mean anything not unless you're able to deliver all that. In other words, the possibility of ending up with a product that nobody uses or doesn't sell becomes a lot less when you're focused on giving a good user experience. There is a quote that I personally like, that I try to live by as an engineer and also as an entrepreneur. It's by Scott Jensen, formerly, I believe, Apple. He created the Apple Human Interface, also worked on the Mac OS 7. Currently, I think he's with Google now. But this quote reminds me that there are various technologies that makes developers and business decision makers life easier. Many of these technologies that enables us to connect with almost everything and everywhere from and to. But then again, it doesn't really make our life easier because utilizing those technologies should never be your primary goal. But in some cases, because of the hype factor, we're kind of lost in our path because of that movement. So, if there's one thing that I would like everybody to take away from today, and you can forget any crap that I say today, but just please do remember this one sentence, is that design systems that offer instead of do. This is, I think, the key, the main topic, the main sentence, the most important subject that I could address today. And I think it's really important because this addresses various aspects of the possibility and also the value surrounding user experience. So it's important to understand the people we're designing because we're creating software for people, not for other machines. If other people in general, not just smartphone users, but in general, aren't able to understand something or a small application, then it's going to be useless. We want to build a product that provides positive experience, not just good experience. This means that we have to create an experience that feels transparent because we don't want to be manipulating anything, and give greater choice and control, creating a strong feeling of engagement with an audience, and also eventually building a greater sense of loyalty to a brand, if it's enterprise or B2B in particular. And my thoughts on what makes a great positive experience possible is when you design a system or a service that offers instead of do. Now, offering versus do is different in a lot of ways. And to give an example, if you were to create an application that sends a push notification just the moment that somebody enters a room based on his GPS or his beacon peripheral, that's doing. You're not giving your end user a chance to think about or make a decision. You're not communicating with the end user. But offer, on the other hand, is you're giving the user to make a decision and give that person a relevant content or even a push that he or she can make the next decision. So as an example, if I were to create, using their earlier example, if I were to create an application that, let's say, gave a list of coupons or the promotions that's been going on in a supermarket, and he or she is able to download the app right off the bat as soon as he or she enters, in my book, that is, you're offering end user experience. You're offering the end user something, not completing a user interaction. But if you were to give somebody a push just because he or she enters a geofence, or because there were some beacons around within the 20 meters or 6 feet or 20 feet, whatever dimension you have it going with your proximity, That's just completing the entire user interaction, not giving the user a chance to control or decide. And I think a lot of apps have thrown off users because of the very reason of utilizing that piece of technology to the very end rather than using it to their better advantage. Just to give you another example, there are a few clients that we are in early discussions with that are within the top 4 major sports here in the United States. And this league in particular, coming down from the commissioner office, had an initiative of installing iBeacons across some of their stadiums. And I believe some of you already have pretty well educated guesses, but I've met with 8 of the teams within that league to discuss creating a user experience using iBeacons around last November. And I even created a demo using Appcelerator Titanium to show them that this is how easy you can build out a user experience using proximity with your iBeacons, which you already have within the 10 of the stadiums, even before the season started. And the discussion carried on for about 4 months, the early discussions. And every feedback that I got from those all 10 teams were pretty much the same. We don't have attendees, we don't have audience that everybody knows what iBeacon is. Not all of our people that comes to our ball game have the latest Android KitKat, or we don't even know what Bluetooth is. That was pretty much the feedback that I got from all the 10 teams that I was speaking with, or 8 teams, one of them being minor. And when I heard that, I think it took me about less than a day to let go of the technology, or being stressed over technology, of trying to find a way or a better way with the current standard that Bluetooth iBeacon has or Smart has, and moving on to a better solution, which I believe today is creating a simple, unified, centralized user experience. At the same time, you are able to understand the user, even their proximity, without using the protocol that's out there as an NFC or iBeacons or audio, whatever. So, to continue on, that is why I would like to share with y'all a customer journey that I believe is the 3 fundamentals within the retail space to get down to the bare bones. First, I think it happens as we users are entering a space, in this case, a store. Then followed by we actually purchase something, we engage. Finally, we leave the premises, we leave the space. We don't go to a location and stay there forever. So I think these are the 3 factors, the simplest key factors that each stage of the user experience within the retail space. Now, each of these stages, I think, represents the discovery phase, engagement, and persuasion. And I think it's important to define whatever vocabulary you have, those user journey, because the more detailed and the more simplified way you're able to define your user journey, the easier way, the more effective way you're able to build out your service. Now with discovery, this is the stage where your user is first aware of your service or even your content. Moving on to engagement, this is when they actually engage to the service or the actual action that is need to be taken at that location, fed off by the awareness or the discovery phase. Finally is the persuasion. Persuasion kind of feels awkward compared to the other 2. Maybe irrelevant to the 3 customer journeys. But I think it's really important to define the last piece of the customer journey as persuasion, because we don't want to build something that people download one time, check it out, and say, oh, this is not for me, and just delete it. We want the end user to buy into the service. We want to create a value so that they return, not just to a location, but return to the app and then use it continuously. And in order to create that, we will have to focus on creating the last piece of the pie, which is we have to be able to persuade the end user. So it's not just about, oh, we have 12 windows, 3 of them being like the menu, the 9 of them are just profiles or settings. I don't think it doesn't end like that. It has to continue on so that the user journey continue on continuously. and the sense of persuasion, which also leads up to, for instance, signing a contract or an agreement that actually sells for money. So I think that's why persuasion is my definition of the last piece of the high-level user journey. Now, starting off with this very high-level stuff, like I mentioned before, it's necessary to go dig deeper. And I think there are two spots we could fill in more. The first one being when we're near a store or near a proximity, and the other one being when we're actually selecting an item. And this is within the retail space. There's a last one, and the uses of the item. Now, the slide before had 3 when the user enters the store, purchases an item, and leaves the store, which is leaving the premises entirely. And added on to this is when a user is aware. I think there are 2 different stages of being aware. You are either aware when you're near a place, and even before, you should be aware of actually thinking about making a decision to go to that place in the first place. And in between, the engagement phase is where you're making the purchase, but even before that, you should be able to select the items that you purchase. And finally, after you leave the premises or that location, we should, as developers or service providers, consider the very fact that the user has to use the item, whether that's the app or the content, or if it's the merchandise that they purchased through the app. I think that's also important, because when the user understands and they are used to understanding that that user journey gives them a benefit, or there's an incentive through using the app, that creates a better value. Therefore, they're persuaded to come back and use the service again. Now, since this is a developer conference, we have to also consider what is needed to actually make this stuff, the real stuff. Now, to begin with the high-level stuff again, with the customer journey that I'm proposing, the technical stack will be the obvious, the front end and the back end. The front end being the mobile app, the back end being the back end services, whatever that may be. Now, I've tried to chop these down and dissect this as simple as possible. And considering the retail environment that we're discussing today, I think the retail architecture or the service architecture, especially the back end, is a little bit more than what most people think is necessary. And this is, again, the difference between the hype layer and what's the dirty stuff that goes on in order to make that magic happen. So at Movable Ads, we're actually pitching a service to a credit card company, a global company, to create an event-based marketing solution, which uses the front end and the back end. And based on that design, this is what I'm sharing today. And the key pieces that apply in the back end was the CRM and the e-commerce and the POS, point of sale, which is not the device itself, but it's actually a piece of software that runs on the tablet. Location management, which includes the sensors and also the geolocations of the point of interest of where the merchandise are actually being sold. And finally, of course, the obvious, and Linux. But under CRM, we are able to deconstruct even more deep down what's necessary. And those were the inventory, the CMS, the promotion, which is like a coupon, and the deals and the rewards, and finally the database. The database part isn't something closer to like a SEM, but it's more of an actual like a membership service with user information. Now with this architecture, we are able to create a very high-level prototype and also go into early discussion with a credit card company. So what does a credit card company has to do with retail space? Now, as I said before, proximity-based service, we can create and design this any way we can because we have the power to do so as developers. Initially, when I had the opportunity to pitch to a credit company, I was blank as a white sheet of paper because there's so many different sensors and apps to benchmark, ideas that I had just flowing all over the place, so I wasn't able to really focus. But then again, I think it was around when there were articles on tech blogs guessing or second guessing what actually happened about Apple Pay coming out. I think I was able to revisit about the protocol NFC. Now, NFC in Asia is kind of big. It's been big since around 2010, 2009. So whenever I'm doing business or working in Korea, I never have any wallet in anywhere. All I need is my phone. Of course, an Android phone back then, which was the only phone that supported NFC. And I think it was relatively easier for me to benchmark different apps that are already been out there or develop use cases where I can actually go in and actually see if there are some things to steal or just to copy. And I think it wasn't too hard to come up with an idea of creating a new service for a credit card company when their interest was not just the card itself, but they actually wanted to go into the retail space. So the storyline went like this. A credit card company owns all the purchasing and user information based on the payment. What they could do is they have the power to understand what the consumer buys, where they buy, and where they buy, and how much they buy, and all sorts of information. So very, 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 very valuable big data, which normally the brick and mortar business does not have, because what they have is they have a point of sale system, they have an app for coupon, so their user experience or their big data that they're able to accumulate is very limited to a second layer, not the low level stuff. But the credit card company, they have all that. What they don't have is the reach to the user experience that happens at those locations. So my pitch was, because credit card companies, they have this funny thing called a BIN number, which stands for Bank Identification Number. So when you shop online, when you input the first 8 digits, for the most part, the web services, they actually know whether you're using a American Express, Visa, or Master. I'm not sure about other cards, but for the most part, I know there are some cards or recent cards that does not fit into the algorithm, but for the most part, that BIN number algorithm is out there. Therefore, when you're creating an app or a web service, you can actually know and guess which card the user is using. So we implemented that idea into the app. So when you have that set, and when your service, when you as a service provider or app developer is able to understand which card your user is using, then you can actually add the second layer, which is the service or the promotion, rather than going after a user saying, oh, please come to this spot. If you check in, we'll give you a coupon. That could be fun for the first or second time, but it kind of gets boring, and people don't really break their normal user convention just because the sake of getting something for free. But then again, if there is a payment system or a credit card that you always use, which you relatively don't change that often, and if you're able to get some kind of incentive based on that usage, my thought was that was like the beef. So the service continued on, the pitch continued on by pitching to them saying, so we will deliver an app that knows whether or not the user that downloads this app uses your particular card, and supplemented by an inventory where you as a credit card company can go out and look for sponsors or other companies that are willing to do a promotion. So right there, this service is not just a B2C app, but we were able to create a new business model, a new revenue stream for the potential client, therefore it becoming an enterprise, a B2B app. So I'll revisit that again. So under the CRM was the inventory, CMS, and the promotion, the coupon data, and the user database, the e-commerce, the point of sale, location management, and analytics, and all put together made sense. It was simple enough for the client, which had no technical background, to understand. And from the pitching standpoint, it was not too hard, because all that I placed before, the blue stuff and the green stuff, could be all built using Platinum SDK and also the ACS stuff, because the cloud service already has all the components ready-made. The Platinum SDK supports, I believe, all the platforms currently listed here. So currently our company, we're not on the Accelerator platform because we're not that rich currently. So we haven't paid a dime, thank God. to this day. But we think that we can actually deliver a market-ready application, maybe even before signing up for an Appcelerator platform, not unless they release a new pricing model, which I think the rumor has going. So, moving on, I would like to share a user story which is relevant to the actual application that I just shared with you before. So this is a user story that I actually used during the pitch. So there's a user, Michelle. She adds her V credit card to her mobile app, and the mobile app knows whether or not she's using the V card or not based on the BIN number or the verification. And she happens to shop at a T store, which is a grocery store, and she takes her card. She already has her credit card submitted, or the number submitted to the application already verified. So the app knows that she is Michelle and she uses the V card. She uses the app to scan the barcodes of all the merchandises during her grocery shopping. But prior to that, she is going to be given a heads up with the home window, the first index page on the app, with all the list of content that's relevant to her current location during the heading or as she's going to the spot. Now, as she is heading, as she entered the store, her app is already customized without having to go through a search or having to answer to a push notification like an OK or cancel. Sometimes I happen to click cancel when I have to click OK. So these are some of the bad use cases where the app, the service is completing the user interaction, but when you give the user something to offer by giving an index page or a home page that's customized to the next user interaction or the action that needs to be taken, it makes it easier. So going back to the story, Michelle, she has her app, she has her V card submitted, the app knows it's a V card user, she enters the store, her app is already customized, the home screen is already based on the T-store merchandise and all the promotion stuff is already in front of her, and there's a single button that she has to click, and when she clicks onto that single button, the app downloads the actual coupons that you are able to use at the store. Whether or not you choose to download that or not, that's the user's decision. We don't have to make that. We shouldn't make that decision. Afterwards, she puts our items in her grocery bag or her shopping cart. She goes to the checkout point and shows the app. And the app generates a code, a barcode. That barcode represents how much the discount has accumulated based on all the coupons that she has used as she was scanning those items. So, before sharing the user story, I mentioned about how this solution could be a potential a new revenue stream for the credit card company, and that is because of this user story. A credit card company can bring in, for instance, let's say we're talking about American Express as an example. American Express wants Coca-Cola as a sponsor or do a promotion. This app could potentially give you a free bottle of Coca-Cola if you swipe your credit card at the checkout, because the app already verified that you are an American Express user, and at the end of the checkout point, when you have scanned the Coca-Cola that you want for free, your app generates a live coupon or a standalone coupon that has all the information of all the free stuff or the discount that you have in your shopping cart, which therefore the clerk just needs to scan the barcode, and that takes away discounts, all the free stuff that you get. So that was the user story or the pitch that was made, and then the company was, I guess, happy enough to continue with the story, and that's where this came along. Alright, so just to give you a little bit more detail of how this will actually work in terms of the retail scenario. So before I share the user customer journey of a user going near a store, entering a store, selecting an item, he or she chooses whether or not to purchase, afterward leaves the store, and then uses the item that she or he purchases. Now, in between, there are different touch points that were important, and we identify the different touch points, not just in the app, because it really helps with the development, and it helps to a point where you can actually make a wiser decision whether or not to use a certain technology, for instance, Bluetooth, because you might not need a certain protocol to develop a user story or a user convention that you planned out. So in this case, we saw that adding a credit card number was the first scenario or a touch point that user had to initiate in terms of the action that needs to be taken with the app. Because if you don't enter your credit card number in the app, there's no way the app will know and you won't be able to use the app. So moving on, the app will verify the number that's submitted to the app. Then the mobile app verifies the GPS and displays the relevant content. This is the part that I mentioned during the user story where Michelle is headed toward a tea store or a grocery store, and then based on the real proximity, geographically, the app recognizes that, sends a callback, like the t-shirt says, redefines the home screen based on her proximity. And it's not really relevant to like a beacon because we really didn't need a beacon. GPS works with any kind of phone, any smartphone that I know of. And we didn't really need to know exactly if she was to actually enter the store. It was just the fact that is she within like a mile or within the parking lot. That's all that we cared about. So we actually used GPS for this part to verify whether or not the home screen needs to be customized to that relevant location. Afterwards, the user, Michelle, enters the store, looks around, makes her decision, regardless the app was on or not, because it didn't matter. But as she was selecting the items, she already knows, based on the customized content on her home screen, that she has the coupons and she knows which of the coupons were usable. She scans the items that were relevant to those promotion and the coupons were discounted. All those will be added to a virtual wallet. So the wallet doesn't really have a currency, but it's a track of a log of all the discounted items that she'll be able to get at the checkout. Afterwards, she shows that app with a barcode displayed, and at the POS, point of sale, the clerk scans the barcode, takes out all the free stuff, and boom. All she needs to pay is whatever wasn't included in the coupon or the free stuff. And she leaves. And after she leaves, the user story or the user customer journey does not end. She can actually revisit all her purchases and also this discount that she has gotten, like as a history. So it's like a black book of coupons or kickbacks that she has gotten. And when we are able to display and let the user revisit the good experience, this helps with the persuasion. The user does not have to revisit the store just for the sake of using the app. The user, all they need to do is have one good experience, and that one good experience leads to a persuasion. Persuasion leads to a revisit. Revisit, and then it's a cycle. Therefore, the retail experience cycle starts with awareness, then you consider, and you purchase, and you grow loyalty. So it's not so much of, please come here, we'll give you something. We're not breaking any user convention from the norm. You do what you do, but just use the app because you'll be incentivized based on your current user convention, which is go to a grocery store, grab a coupon book, use the coupon book, and then pay what you owe, and then leave. Therefore, you know what to expect. You know what you should be aware of. The more you use the app, the more you grow loyalty through the app. So that was the retail experience cycle that we came up with this potential client. Hopefully we'll be signing soon. And revisiting the retail, the sports venue scenario. So Bluetooth, I think, is going to get better. I personally think so, even with their standards. And I think different use cases is going to come out even more. But I think not really fixating the development process based on what technology you use is really crucial, is really important, because you do not want to place yourself where you have to use a certain sensor just because of the sake of the hype, or because it's cool, or because your client wants it. Because at the end of the day, you might end up in a place where you don't want to end up. And also, like I said before, that one sentence, I think it's really important, and there's a lot of value behind creating a user experience that is good enough, that is great enough, so that it becomes a cycle where we as service provider or app developers, we do not have to educate somebody for awareness, nor for it to create a loyalty. User experience will create that for us. So I think it's really important to really value this user experience aspect, where it's really easy to overlook the value behind it because you can't really touch it, you can't really feel it. It's not going to pay immediately, but even having done projects with my former company, creating the next big thing, there were a lot of projects where the user experience was neglected just because of the sake of not being visual, or they couldn't really see how much this is going to make us, or is the X6 or X7 going to be selling more just because having added this user experience. And I guess maybe it was lack of confidence from my end, being able to explain it more simply, but I think not having that focus on user experience at the end of the day leads to the pitfall of a tailspin in sales, which is actually happening now. Anyways, so this is actually it with my story that I was going to share today, but I do want to mention if there's any question at all, because I haven't shared any code, therefore I'm assuming there's no real question behind this session, but if there is, please don't hesitate to ask. But if not, if you do come up with a question or an inquiry based on my session today, or even with the what we're doing as a company, you can reach me at any time. I actually answer 24/7. I think it's like an Asian thing. So please do reach out to me, and thank you. Yes?
How do you communicate the need for the consumer to enter the credit card number as far as like consumer confidence goes, or convincing them to do that separate process?
So this app in particular is going to be a dedicated app, white labeled through the credit card company. So we won't need to be marketing anything. The app will be under the credit card company's name. Yes?
A lot of consumers are lazy. They don't want to sit there and scan every item they're purchasing at the store. To me, it seems better if at the checkout line, they just scan a barcode from the app, and the POS system, as they scan the items, discounts them.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we decide to have them actually scan the items?
Can you repeat that question again? I didn't get the first part.
So to me, it seems like it's very tedious for the consumer to be scanning
Manually scanning the items.
the items. And the items are already going to be scanned at the POS system. So why not have the POS system apply the discount once you scan the app to see that they actually have the app?
That is a very good question. It actually, our solution to the problem actually came based on a real problem leading up to the next problem, which was a lot of the stores don't have Stripe. They don't have an iPad where you can just use PayPal now. And there are a couple POS companies that actually owns a lot of the majority of the market space, where their intention is nowhere close to opening up their system. So therefore, a third party like us can actually tap into their system, make an interface or an adapter where we can actually communicate that in a way where you're presenting. So in a way, I had to admit, but it was a compromise. But then again, the client was happier with the turnout because in terms of dealing with merchandise, although we're not actually a pay gate, we're not using the credit card number for purchases. It's just taking away from what's going to be actually going through the POS. They were still very aware of the fact that there were numbers, money flowing around. So from the client standpoint, the feedback was the safer the better. And I think with the end user, I do agree to a certain extent that it makes it life a lot easier. But I guess in terms of the market-wise, having a starting point where the user actually has to scan manually won't hurt the next phase, because the next phase will be more than likely something more simplified, or a scenario where you suggest where they don't actually have to manually scan every item as they're putting it into their cart.
But it's not necessarily a bad interaction, because as you said, towards providing new ways to offer people things, I'm already thinking about, well, when I'm in a store and doing comparison buys, if that scanning is not just to see what the discount is, but then can let me go compare this to the other products that are in a similar
Correct.
becomes a very useful action.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you take it back out and you don't scan out, then you know you can offer them,
Mhm.
this price is too high, this offer
Right.
Mhm.
something to come back for.
That is actually very good feedback. Thank you.
Exactly, the offer versus two. Because if you just do it, the user's not gonna know it and then they're not gonna get that warm fuzzy, I saved some money feeling, because although they did,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know they did. Pick up on it.
Are there any other feedbacks or questions? If not, I'll wrap it up. Thank you very much.